So here in the United States of America, where I live, Texas to be specific, it's springtime. The weather is warming up, which I hate because I'm a cold weather guy, but here in Texas the weather is warming up and nature is waking up, and the harsh cold weather associated with the winter in many parts of the United States is kind of going away. And around this time, there's this phrase people start thinking about spring cleaning, where they get their lives tidy, they get their homes together, they start putting their lives back in order. But I'm actually thinking about spring cleaning in a different way. I'm thinking about like internal, spiritual, mental, internal cleaning. And that's what this week is going to be about in this podcast. So I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to help you live the best life possible. So, when I was a kid, believe it or not, most people don't believe this about me, but I am an introvert. In fact, I'm a pretty significant introvert, where I like to spend time with myself, and I like to kind of reflect and take a moment to get to know me and spend time with me. And where it started was actually as a young kid, when my family was still together in one home, before my parents decided to go their separate ways, and before me and my brothers aged and had our own friends. We lived in a small house in Chicago, Illinois when I was really, really young. My younger brother and I shared bunk beds. I slept on the top bunk. My younger brother slept on the bottom bunk. My older brother had his own room, and my parents had their own room. And that was our life. That was our house. And with 5 people in this small house, I never really felt like I had time alone. Like there was always somebody around, and there was always hecticness, and we always had to go to cousin so-and-so's house, or, there was just always something like flying around. And I realized that just to give you an idea of how old I was at the time, we moved out of that house when I was 3 or 4. So I'm talking really young. I realized that the quietest time in the house was when everybody was asleep. So I used to lay in bed and pretend to be asleep. So then when my younger brother fell asleep, and my older brother was in his room, or my parents were in their room, I would wake up and I would climb halfway down the ladder. And I would sit on the ladder and just think. I would just sit on the ladder and I would just think. I would think about like what toys I hoped to get. I was young. I remember thinking about what toys I would hope to get, and what I wanted to be in life, and just like, whatever a 3 or 4-year-old kind of goes through their mind. I would just sit and think for what seemed like forever. And this is before there were like iPads and cell phones and laptops or any of that stuff. I was really just spending time with me. And even to this day, I'm an adult who enjoys isolated time, spending time with me. I like going on long road trips. When I say long road trips, I mean like super long road trips. During COVID-19 shutdown, when you couldn't fly, and then later on when you could fly, but it was quite unsafe, I drove to Chicago, Illinois, where my mother lives, and I love being out on the road by myself, just kind of driving. And I like traveling, sitting in a dark airplane with nothing but my thoughts. Like I enjoy those things. And I think one of the things that makes me sad about the world we live in now is there is so much distraction. And we think of that as like distraction from me doing the things I want to do, like distraction from accomplishing goals or working on things or whatever. But I actually think what we're most distracted from is spending time with ourselves and getting to know us, because we're constantly attending to the outside world. Like we're constantly looking at our phones that are blowing up, and we're constantly on social media, and we're watching videos on YouTube, and we're streaming things all the time, and we have entertainment at our fingertips 24/7. But one of the gifts of my childhood was boredom, because as a consequence of boredom, I had to learn to just kind of sit and enjoy me. I had to learn to sit and enjoy being with myself. And I think that's a gift that we need to attend to. I think that's something that we need to recognize as important. And I just think the world that we live in it distracts us from spending time with ourselves. And some people call it motivation, and for the purposes of this podcast, meditation. Some people call it meditation. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to call it self-reflection. But one of the greatest things you can do is just kind of reflect on yourself and spend time with yourself and get to know yourself and reflect on the things that matter to you and reflect on your values, because I think that's how you make life richer for yourself, and that's how you really kind of stay solid and stay really grounded in this crazy world that we live in. So, I want you to think about, when are moments in your life where you got a moment to self-reflect? Like, what was the earliest time in your life that you got to realize that self-reflection was important? And what lessons did you learn from it that still are with you to this very day? Hey, thanks for being here with me today. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please do me a huge favor and help me spread the word of this podcast by sharing this on your social media platforms, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite place is to consume podcasts and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Whether you were watching the 2022 Oscars this past weekend live, or like me, you found out after the fact, I know you all saw the incident where Chris Rock was assaulted, really, and slapped on the stage by Will Smith after making a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife. And I watched that, and I thought about it, and since this week we're talking about self-reflection, I want to talk about how taking a moment of reflection could have helped this moment from getting out of hand. I want to talk about what we can do in moments like this to stay in control, and how self-reflection can help us do just that. This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years I've helped hundreds of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And in this podcast, the aha moments, I use the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to make a difference in your life. So let's talk about what happened this weekend. When I saw what happened, to be honest with you, my immediate experience was sadness. I felt sad for everyone involved. I felt sad for Jada Pinkett Smith because she had to endure being made fun of for a medical condition. I felt bad for Chris Rock because even though he made what I consider to be an inappropriate joke, I don't think you should ever make fun of people for their medical conditions, he was assaulted on the stage. I felt bad for Will Smith because even though he went up on the stage and committed an act of violence, it's not easy to watch your wife suffer and struggle. I felt bad for the audience. I felt bad for the organizer. I mean, literally everyone involved, I felt bad for. But I want to talk about self-reflection and why it is so important to pause. So let's talk about, I want to start off with Chris Rock. Now, I experienced his joke as wildly inappropriate because I knew that Jada Pinkett Smith's issue was a medical issue. Like, she wasn't choosing to be bald. She lost her hair due to alopecia, which is a disorder where your hair falls out. But I can't say whether Chris Rock knew that or not. But let's say he didn't for a second. If I'm going to tell a joke in front of the entire world about a bald woman, I need to be sure that that woman is bald by choice. And I need to investigate. And I need to slow the process down and check. What if she were going through chemotherapy because she had some form of cancer? You've got to be sure about these things. And taking a moment of reflection is how we stay sure. And that's kind of the point of why I say, regardless whether he knew or didn't, the joke was inappropriate and he shouldn't have made it. Will Smith, having heard that joke, it doesn't justify an act of violence. He later said he was protecting his wife. That's not true. You were protecting your wife's honor. Your wife was not in immediate and or physical danger, so violence to protect her was not necessary. And you knew. You have the platform where you can protect her honor in non-violent ways. In fact, at this exact event, hours later, he was standing behind the microphone and could have taken that opportunity to stand up for his wife. Violence is never okay and should never be okay. And had he just taken a moment, he would have been able to realize how to handle it better. And in a moment of reflection, you realize Chris Rock, whether doing it well or not, is doing his job. And there are video examples on YouTube of Will Smith being in the Chris Rock role, saying inappropriate things about other people. But in that moment, he let his emotions take over. In that moment, he let his emotions run him. In that moment, he lost control. And self-reflection helps us stay in control, helps us stay congruent to who we want to be. It helps us live by our integrity and not by our emotions, which often lead us to getting out of control. Having perspective is incredibly important. And in a moment, I think everyone lost perspective. I think Chris Rock lost perspective. I think Will Smith lost perspective and created a moment that is just bad and sad for everyone involved. And if we can self-reflect enough to stay in our best version of ourselves, then we will be able to lead our life from our integrity and from our congruence instead of losing control and letting our emotions take over. So look, I know many of you have made a poor or quick decision, brash decision. I want you to look back on those decisions and think, how would your decisions have changed had you just taken a moment to reflect on what was happening and how to respond? Thank you so much for being here today. Please take a moment and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to my podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you tomorrow. We always hear terms like self-reflection and meditation thrown around, but what does it really mean? Today I want to take a dive into these terms and share what they mean and how to apply these terms in your life in a way that is meaningful, makes a difference, and gives you a higher quality of life. I'm Elliott Connie. I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist so that you can live a better life. So let's talk about this idea of meditation and self-reflection and how to actually do it in your life in a meaningful way. You know, I was just doing therapy with a teenager, and I was thinking about the world that they're living in. The parents get really frustrated with this teenager. Teenager's like 13 years old, 7th grade boy. And they get really frustrated because in the middle of the night, he says he has a hard time sleeping through the night. So in the middle of the night, he wakes up 2 in the morning, and he turns on the television and he watches Netflix or Hulu or whatever streaming movie or whatever thing captures his attention at the time. And then he has a hard time waking up in the morning and his behavior is impacted and all these things. And the parents are really frustrated. And it caused me to think, I'm 45 years old. And when I was 13, it was like 1989. Before cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, laptops, the whole nine. And if I woke up in the middle of the night in 1989 and I tried to watch television, I would see a snowy screen. So oftentimes, meditation and self-reflection happened out of sheer boredom. There was nothing else to do at a certain hour of the day, at a certain time. There literally was nothing else to do. We live in such a world that distracts our attention so significantly that the first thing I want to tell you, I'm going to try to cover 3 things. The first thing I want to tell you is you have to plan opportunities for meditation and self-reflection. You have to purposely say, I'm going to take this time to dedicate my day or dedicate this moment or dedicate this experience to take time to self-reflect. You've got to turn off the notifications on your cell phone, on your computer. You've got to really shut down and slow down and create an opportunity to you to turn within. I mean, that really is what self-reflection and meditation are. It's turning within. And in order to do that successfully, you have to quiet the noise. And in 2022, there is such a large amount of noise, so much more noise than we have ever experienced before as a society. So if you really want to reconnect, if you really want to kind of get there with yourself, you've got to turn off the noise and reconnect. The second tip I want to give you is that time period can be as long or short as it needs to be. You can literally be like a Zen Buddhist and sit for an hour or in your space and in your time and turn inward, or you can literally spend just 60 seconds just before you start today, before you get out of bed, before you reach for that cell phone, before you start everything going. Just spend 60 seconds just laying in bed, turning inward, and getting in touch with your feelings, your thoughts, your experiences, the things that matter to you, the things that really touch you, what you want to accomplish in that day, but really kind of sit in your own experiences and get in touch with them. And the third thing I would tell you to do is, as you sit in your experiences, allow them to flow. Don't run from your thoughts. Sometimes you might have difficult thoughts, you might be going through difficult things, but allow them to flow and allow them to be a part of you and allow them to be part of the experience. You don't have to run away from them. I had a client the other day that said to me that they had someone pass away and they just want to think about the lovely experiences that they've had in their life with the person who passed away, and they feel like if they focus on the joy, they're being distracted from the pain. And I don't think that's true. I think you're kind of honoring the experience by remembering positive things that you had happen with that person. So those are things that I think will really help you understand self-reflection and understand meditation and how to activate it in your life. And I hope it helps and makes a difference. And I want you to be able to carve out time in your life and follow these principles, because if you can achieve this, if you can do this in your life, I promise it will increase the level of satisfaction and productivity you have in your day. Thanks so much for listening. Please do me a favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms, or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. Head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you tomorrow. So we've been talking about self-reflection and how self-reflection has the ability to improve your life and your work and your quality of life and all of the things. But how does it work? How do you start seeing noticeable changes in your life? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today, as we start talking about how do you see the impact and the difference that adding self-reflection and meditation makes to your life. Welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to help you live the very best life that you can. So how does self-reflection work? I don't know. I don't know that I can actually say. But I can tell you that the fact that we know it works is more important than the actual pragmatics of how it works. But I can tell you how to start noticing the changes that you make, that you will experience in your life, and that is to look for them. The very famous quote, I believe it's by Albert Einstein actually, that says a change is only a change if it is noticed. And noticing is a really interesting thing, because you could have something positive happen in your life and something negative. But there are certain people who pay such close attention to negative things that they don't notice the positive things. They're so attentive to the negative things that they really don't even notice it. They don't even catch it. They don't even attend to it. So how do you notice positive changes? Is you look for them. And the beautiful thing in the world is there are both positive changes that happen in our lives and negative things happening simultaneously all of the time. For example, it might be raining outside and you're super bummed that it's raining and you can't take a walk because it's raining. But the rain also means that the flowers are being watered and the flowers in your back garden are more likely to bloom. See what I'm saying? So it is really important to be able to pay attention to the impact of things with a level of intention. So once you start adding self-reflection and moments of turning inward, which is really all self-reflection and meditation is to your day, you have to train yourself to start looking for evidence that it is making a difference. You have to train yourself to be able to pay attention to the positive impact. And you have to pay attention to the positive impact, not the negative impact. For example, don't look for problems to see if they're gone. Look for joyous moments to see if they're present. That one shift makes all of the difference. So once you start paying attention to these positive things as a consequence of beginning to add self-reflection to your day, it makes a difference. And who cares why it works? A friend of mine, also one of the most successful businessmen in the world, he literally, this guy, and not only is he a successful businessman, I don't mean to say like that's the reason that we should pay attention to what I'm about to say, but he's also happy, joyous. He's just really joyous, connected, and happy. And he has a morning meditative practice that he's been doing for years. So how does it work? I don't know. But there's evidence in his life that it does work. I don't know that I can scientifically say, because when you do this meditation, self-reflection, your brain does this and positive endorphins and da-da-da. I don't know that that's true. But I know that when you add time in your day and you start reflecting and spending time with yourself and really connecting in that way, really positive things begin to happen. And that makes a significant and extraordinary difference in your life. And if you don't believe me, try it. So what I want to invite you to do is to just pay attention. Do some meditative practices in your day and in your life. Spend time with yourself. 60 seconds, 60 minutes, doesn't matter. Just spend some time in yourself and you will be able to see the magic that happens from doing so, but only if you look for it. Thank you so very much for being here today. Please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to Apple Podcasts or anywhere else where you listen to your podcast. It would make a big difference for me. And I will see you tomorrow. So there's this person in my life. He's a bit of a mentor, a bit of a friend. He's a really important person in my life that I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. And his name is Jeff. And Jeff is one of the people in my life that exemplifies self-reflection and meditation and kind of turning inward, as we've been talking about all week, more than anyone else that I know. So today I want to introduce you to Jeff and talk about how that turning inward and that self-reflection increases quality of life. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to help you live your very best life. And one of the most important lessons that I've learned comes from my friend Jeff. Now, Jeff is someone who starts his morning with a meditation routine. When you're around Jeff, he just emanates calm, warmth, love, kindness, and generosity. And when you talk to him, he will tell you one of the things that's really key to him and being able to be that kind of person is being able to start his day with this morning routine that is all about self-reflection and meditation and starting his day from a balanced, centered place. And to me, that's so amazing, because how many of us start our day by reaching over and grabbing our phone and starting to look at emails we missed overnight and the text messages and the phone calls and all of those things? How many of us, we start our day with the noise instead of the silence? Let's start our day with the noise instead of the turning inward. Let's start our day with the noise instead of the connecting with ourselves. One day I asked Jeff, how he does it. How do you stay the type of person that you are? How do you stay being that person? And he said, the key to his happiness, the key to his ability to be those things is the morning routine. But it's also very important to him to get outside and move his body. So every Friday, he skis. He lives in an area where skiing is easily accessible to him. And he has what he calls Ski Friday. And every Friday, he goes out in the mountain and he skis, because it's really important to him to get out into the world and move his body, is how he describes it. But how do you get to know that about yourself? How do you learn that getting out into the world and moving my body is an important component to my ability to be happy and successful and live the type of life where I'm thriving? Well, the way you do that is you have to spend time with yourself, just like anyone else. I know, my really close friends are Matthew and Adam. I know a whole lot about what makes them tick, what drives them. I know a whole lot about what they benefit from and what makes a difference in their life and what makes them happy, what makes them angry, what makes them sad, what makes them anxious. I know that because I've spent a lot of time with them. I've been around them a lot. So I've learned the things that are keys to their happiness and success. You have to spend time with yourself if you want to learn those same things about yourself. Jeff knows what makes him tick. Jeff has learned, in order for me to be the version of me that I want to be, I have to be out in nature and get my body moving. He learned that because he has spent time with himself. He learned that because he has spent time connected to himself. He learned that because he has listened to himself. And that's really what self-reflection is about, spending time with yourself and listening. But we live in a world where it is harder than ever before to spend time with ourselves. It is harder than ever before to be connected to ourselves. It is harder than ever before to just get to know us and be responsive and reflective of who we are. And the happy, successful people that I know in my life are the ones who have spent time with themselves. They know what they need. They know how they need it. And it allows them to live a life where they're making sure they have the things that they need to be successful. And that's the lesson I want you guys to get from listening to this podcast during this week when we talk about self-reflection. Spend time with yourself. Get to know yourself so that you can make sure that yourself is fed and your needs are met. And not selfishly, but so you can meet other people's needs too. So thanks for being here today and this week. It really means a lot to me, so please do me a huge favor and share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you consume your podcast, and I will see you on Monday.